Now to our international affairs editor, Armen, Georgian, who's in Brussels covering the summit. Armen, NATO says it's opening a new chapter in history. Just tell us more. What does that mean?
Well, President Joe Biden has been praised by allies here, and particularly by NATO, the NATO Secretary General, because of the signals that he has sent to the alliance. There seems to be appreciation for Biden's stated desire to invest in this relationship, that the whole transatlantic bond. But the question is, how far will NATO allies go in following Biden's agenda? Clearly, Biden wants a robust stance on China, but that's easier to achieve in a G7, which has, of course, 7 nations rather than an alliance of 30 members, which NATO is, and where there are different priorities. You have, for example, the former Soviet bloc states in NATO. We heard some quite strong language from some of them this morning about Russia, and Russia is their main concern, and they don't want any messages on China to dilute that sense of Russia as a priority, which it is for them. Also on NATO funding, questions about how far NATO allies will go. Currently, only about a third of NATO members actually spend the required 2% of their GDP on defense, and that means that there is certainly potential for more tensions in this relationship between the US and NATO allies. For many years, the US has been urging those other countries to spend more, and clearly that problem has not gone away.
Now, against the backdrop of tensions between Turkey and France, both French President Emmanuel Macron and Turkish President Recep Erdogan have just met. So what do we know that came out of that meeting, Armen?
Well, it sounded like a pretty difficult encounter. We got a readout of this meeting from the French president's entourage, and it said that Macron told his Turkish counterpart that secularism should not be instrumentalized. This is clearly a reference to the very bitter feud that the two men had a few months ago, when President Erdogan said that Macron needed mental treatment because of Macron's comments about Islam. So clearly that ill feeling has not gone away. They did use this very diplomatic language in the meeting about supposedly wanting to make progress together on Libya and Syria. But the reality is that Turkish actions against Kurdish militias in northern Syria does put Turkey and France at loggerheads. And meanwhile, Libya has emerged really as a focal point of the rivalry between France and Turkey. So I think behind the diplomatic, the relatively moderate language today really lies a very, very big gap in ambitions and geopolitical goals.
Armen, Georgian.